Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
It is our museum in a very real way.
If the British had won the battle at St. Louis, the world would be a different place.
So much history that people would be excited to know but don't.
Today on Spotlight, making its St. Louis debut inside Origami in the Garden. Plus, part 2 of our interview with the soon-retiring Art Museum Director, Brent Benjamin. And then a new documentary details the attack on St. Louis in the late 1700s. But first, some history about Jefferson Barracks that you might not know. It's Sunday, and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
When I came to work here, I found that most everybody, if you said Jefferson Barracks, it was a cemetery. Jefferson Barracks was originally 1,702 acres, given to the United States government. The name came about because Thomas Jefferson, a lot of people, certainly Confederates, like to say Jefferson Davis, and this was his first duty station after he graduated from West Point in 1828, but it was named for Thomas Jefferson. It opened in June of 1826. It was a good deal for everybody because the government got a place with lots of wood here, limestone, which was quarried 50 yards from here, and a waterway, which was the main highway. It became the first infantry school of practice. Very nice way of saying boot camp. Jefferson Barracks sent troops out and they fought in every war that the United States was involved in. Between the Black Hawk War in 1832 up through, actually, National Guard troops went out to Afghanistan.
So it's an important post, and it's very important because of all the equipment and material and men that transfer through here. Westward expansion really emanates from where you're standing. Everything the U.S. Army was using was shipping from here to points west. For example, the 6th Infantry Regiment is going to ship from here. The 1st Missouri Volunteers are going to ship from here. The brand new Regiment of Dragoons, they're going to leave from here. In fact, the brand new Regiment of Dragoons is organized and raised here. In many regards, Jefferson Barracks is the birthplace of American cavalry. Another important point in the history of Jefferson Barracks is our role in the creation of Buffalo Soldiers. There were some integrated units in the Continental Army during the American Revolution, but for the most part, the United States Army is segregated. We don't have troops of African American origin until the time of the American Civil War, when they're serving in volunteer formations known as U.S. colored troops. After the war, it's decided to create 4 regiments of African American troops, 2 of cavalry, 2 of infantry. 3 of those regiments, the 24th Infantry and the 9th and 10th Cavalry, were organized here at Jefferson Barracks. The 9th and 10th Cavalry, of course, have got a dramatic history. They're the ones really known as the Buffalo Soldiers.
It was turned over to the medical department during the Civil War, so there were lots of people here. There were over 30,000 patients in Jefferson Barracks General Hospital during the Civil War.
The Civil War hospital stood till about 1902, and during the Second World War, the medical department had about 12,000 people working at Jefferson Barracks. One of the nurses' barracks still stands over on Hancock. Going on with this theme of how things change, we have the introduction of machine guns. And the 1895 Colt, which is here, a great example of an early machine gun that was used by the United States. 2 of these get sent to Cuba during the Spanish-American War. Did the U.S. Army buy machine guns? No. Did Tiffany, people know Tiffany lamps, Tiffany? His son served in the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, and so the old man ponied up to buy a section of machine guns for the cavalry regiment, which was commanded by Leonard Wood. It's not just a story about young men, it's a story about young Americans. Women had a role as well in Jefferson Barracks. There was the Women's Auxiliary Corps were here. We had WACs, and as well as the Women's Army Nursing Corps, which had a very significant presence at the post as well. The U.S. Army Air Corps even had an auxiliary with female pilots, the WASPs, who would transport aircraft.
Have you ever heard of Kathy Williams, who enlisted as William Cathay and was the only woman to serve in the Buffalo Soldier regiments, and she enlisted here at Jefferson Barracks. Some of the more obscure but still important, the first successful parachute jump from an airplane took place on the parade ground at Jefferson Barracks in March of 1912. Albert Berry jumped, he was strapped to the struts of a biplane. He untied himself or unsnapped himself from the struts and he jumped. He said it was a very hard landing, but he was good. So much history that people would be excited to know but don't. But in my estimation, as far as a continuously active post, Jefferson Barracks is probably, if not the most important, right up there in the top.
My name is Bill Hershey. I am a professional taps bugler. I started playing taps out here in March of 2000, so it's been about 10 years at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery. Taps is just a soulful 24 notes, 24 beautiful notes, and I try to make every note just sound just beautiful. It's really an honor to play taps to the veterans. Back in 1898, an Army bugler one day came up with the 24 notes of taps. He wrote it down and he played it one night at 9 p.m. and people heard that and it just caught on, and then it became taps for the funerals. So that's where it started back in 1898. The first taps I played was in the Army Band at Arlington National Cemetery, my first taps ever. I saw the widow weeping, the firing party fired, I played taps and my lips started to quiver. I got emotional about it. I missed a couple notes, the sound was not that desirable, and after it was over, I had to tell myself, hey, you can't get emotionally involved. And from that moment on, I just focused on the notes, how it sounds, to make it sound as beautiful as I could, and I've never gotten nervous again. In my opinion, when the family hears live taps, I think it just brings emotion to the surface, and it's really the final farewell salute to their loved ones.
Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Perched atop Art Hill, the St. Louis Art Museum is a familiar sight to generations of St. Louisans. The museum has evolved with the times and has a vast collection of art from every period in history. The quality of the museum is what attracted Brent Benjamin to sign on as museum director in 1999. Benjamin is retiring in 2021 after nearly 22 years on the job. In a socially distanced interview, Benjamin reflected on his time here and his impact on the beloved institution. After you took the job and you'd been in the position for a little while, What surprised you? What jumped out at you that you had not anticipated?
What surprised me? Well, I would say that, I think St. Louis has a reputation for not embracing change. But when I came, of course, after a while, I wanted to make certain kinds of changes in the museum, and those changes were embraced. I had some ideas about the staffing and the structure I wanted to change, and that was embraced. I had some ideas about installing the collection differently, and those were embraced. I had some ideas about some acquisitions, and not only were those embraced, but people came up with resources to help us do those things. I mean, they wrote checks. And I thought, well, this is really fun. And so in a way, some of those things were easier here than I would have imagined.
What is the role of a museum of art in today's society?
Well, I don't think the role of an art museum has changed all that much. I think it's very clear that the museum is here to provide access to everyone to great works of art, to original works of art, right? Mm-hmm. Something that, used to be the preserve of only the elite, the clergy, the aristocracy, the extravagantly wealthy, right? And now, here in St. Louis, anybody can walk in the door, any time of the day, spend 2 hours, spend 20 minutes, spend a whole lifetime spending time in front of great, great things. I mean, I always talk about the purpose of art museums is to help us understand the world around us and our place in it, right? To realize that, the things that we are facing are nothing that hasn't been faced before, that the objects themselves are often survivors of cataclysm, right? And that a series of somebodies over centuries felt that they were worthy of preservation for one reason or another. So there are lots and lots of lessons in art museums. But of course, we show contemporary art as well, and things that are commissioned for us by living artists. So it is everything from the past to the present.
Where does this institution stand in the industry?
So, if you're talking about comprehensive art museums, this institution is easily in the top 10. And as such, it is an outsized resource for a community of this size, which is right nowhere near the top 10 in population. That has to do with the age of the institution, founded in 1879. It's been around for a long time. Has to do with the robustness of local collecting and the way in which people have donated, works of art and entire collections over generations to this museum. And it has to do with the robustness of public funding. This museum has been funded by the public since 1909. It was not free for the first 25 years. You had to pay to get in. And Halsey Ives, who was the first director, ran a campaign to ask the taxpayers, asked them to fund the museum, and in 1909 they said yes. And they have continued to say yes. And I find that not only extraordinary, but I find it that to me makes my responsibility very clear, right? I am indebted to every single taxpayer in the city and the county. It is our museum in a very real way, in a way that's not necessarily so true of other museums. And I really feel that when I'm in the galleries with members of the public, that they really they feel a personal stake in this institution.
Could you compare and contrast the museum that you inherited to the museum that you're leaving for your successor? What are the differences over 22 years?
Oh gosh, well, it's hard to say. There are so many. I mean, of course it's a generation, and so things would change regardless. But we've built the curatorial and the conservation staff, right? In a very, very big way. We've built the audience. We've built a lot of diversity into the audience. We have reinstalled every gallery in the museum with the sole exception of the decorative arts galleries, which are level 100 West. And those are on the list. Everything else has moved since I've been here, which is incredible. And in doing so, we've had a chance to rethink the stories we're telling, to rethink the way in which the galleries are installed, to rethink what's located where.
So you can look back on that little 39-year-old who walked through those front doors for the first time and say, That worked out pretty well. We've done good.
Well, I have to say, I hope it's been as enjoyable for others as it's been for me, because it's been incredible for me.
Scan the QR code on your screen to find out what Brent plans to do with his retirement, or visit hecmedia.org.
You just never know where that spark is going to come from.
You're putting a human touch to everything through the vehicle of art. We give them the ability to hope.
From Busch Stadium in downtown St. Louis, welcome to Cardinals baseball as the Cardinals play the second game of a 4-game series against the Los Angeles Dodgers.
St. Louis is a baseball town.
Smith corks one into right down the line.
With a long history of epic victories. But on May 26, 1780, the site of this ball field was the center of a battlefield. And what took place in St. Louis that afternoon reshaped the future of the city and possibly the entire American West. And it all happened in less time than it takes to play a baseball game.
Well, I think most people, when you first say the Battle of St. Louis, think it must have been an American Civil War battle. They come up to me afterwards and say, I never heard of this before.
Probably one of the most significant and underrated battles of the entire American Revolution.
It was the first of only 2 Revolutionary War battles fought west of the Mississippi, with a legacy that has rippled across 2.5 centuries of American history.
The Battle of St. Louis is one of the reasons why Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan are now part of the United States rather than Canada.
People just don't know about it. And then when they hear about it, they refuse to believe it.
Certainly never learned about it in school, and went to school here in St. Louis, grade school and high school and college. Never remember hearing about it at any of that.
The vast majority of the books written about the American Revolution are written by authors from Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Maryland, Virginia. Gee, I see a pattern there. It's East Coast snobbery.
In St. Louis, a few reminders of the battle still exist, but not many. The only genuine relic that survives is the church bell used to warn the town it was coming under attack. For a long time, the story of the battle itself was under attack.
In the late 19th century, there were historians who denied that it had ever happened. And then the evidence turned up that in fact it had happened, and it turned out to be a much bigger story than anybody had anticipated.
Now, a pair of history detectives is trying to fill in the rest of the blanks, looking for clues buried in ancient documents written in 3 languages, hidden on 2 continents.
It's a completely different set of stories that are just fascinating and that we're still learning about.
The attack on St. Louis was led by the British, but they recruited Native Americans to do most of the fighting.
They knew they had to pick a side. Some of it was trying to make calculated decisions in a way that wouldn't get too many of them killed.
The Battle of St. Louis is a story of keen foresight, vainglorious mistakes, redemption, high hopes, and false hopes.
You have this group that's in bondage. They're listening to this. Liberty, freedom. It sounds really great. I want that too.
The St. Louisans who came under attack that day were outnumbered 3-1, but a surprise, thunderous defense led to their unlikely victory.
Oh, say, can you see?
If St. Louis's ragtag militia had lost the fight at this spot on that day, today, these St. Louisans might be standing for the singing of God Save the Queen at a cricket match instead of a baseball game. between St. Louis and Los Angeles, the visiting team from Mexico.
If the British had won the battle at St. Louis, the world would be a different place.
Had St. Louis fallen, maybe we'd still be having tea at 4 o'clock with our pinky in the air.
Scan the QR code on your screen to watch this HEC exclusive documentary or visit hecmedia.org.
HEC Films explore, inspire, educate, and entertain. HEC Films, just one of the many facets of award-winning content you'll find at hecmedia.org.
We are at the Missouri Botanical Garden, where we have Origami in the Garden on display all summer long. Origami in the Garden is a traveling sculpture exhibit from Santa Fe artists Kevin and Jennifer Box, and it features large-scale metal sculptures that tell the story of the art of paper folding, or origami. There are 18 sculptures throughout the garden, and they are made of museum-quality metals. They start with a single piece of paper that's folded into an origami sculpture, and that is then done on a larger scale in museum-quality metals. The process of installing the sculptures for Origami in the Garden took about a week. The artists spent a week in St. Louis overseeing the installation of the pieces. I watched them assemble this piece right here, so it was kind of flying through the air on a crane as it got up on that pedestal. The one in the central axis was kind of like an artificial Christmas tree. It came in 3 pieces that they put together to make that tower. And that again was done with a crane, so lots of heavy lifting, teamwork involved, and now they're throughout the garden and they look amazing. These pieces are specifically designed to be displayed in botanical gardens, and we thought it was a perfect fit for the Missouri Botanical Garden. They have several different size shows, and we have the largest on display because we have 79 beautiful acres here at the Missouri Botanical Garden. Again, we have 18 sculptures throughout the garden. We have traditional origami peace cranes, we have floating boats, flying airplanes, this lovely Pegasus behind me, just really a wonderful array of different sculptures. In the central axis, we have a sculpture in the pools that has 500 origami peace cranes, and they are reflected in the pool to represent 1,000 origami peace cranes, which are a symbol of good luck. And we do have a community component to Origami in the Garden, and that is our folded force that's on display in the Brookings Exploration Center. And anyone in the community is welcome to create their own origami paper sculpture that will be on display in that folded forest area. Origami in the Garden will be on display at the Missouri Botanical Garden through October 10th. For more information, you can visit our website at mobot.org. And Origami in the Garden is included with general garden admission. The garden is open Tuesday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we will also have some evening hours for Origami in the Garden.
The St. Louis Symphony plays America the Beautiful later on Spotlight.
I want the work I do to come from an intimate, caring absorption in the process. I tear stuff up. I stack things, books mostly, sometimes other objects, in the way that sculptors who work with soft materials often stack unconventional objects to make the sense of a sculpture come into view. I see the work I do as commenting on the discrepancies between individual memory and public history.
Buzz Spector Alterations presents an array of work from Buzz's career from the 1970s to today. Buzz Spector is a conceptual artist. The purest definition of conceptual art is that the art is very much about the idea. Everything is planned out and thought through very well, but he also cares deeply about the aesthetics of the object and the process and how it looks and feels.
One of the things that was important in choosing the work for the show is not to choose the things that I was fondest of for whatever idiosyncratic reason, but to build a kind of constellation of interests based on work I'd made and led into public life. My overwhelming sense, the first time I was able to see the completed installation, was that everything was where it was supposed to be. And I can't tell you enough how moving an experience it is for an artist to see these shards of a life knit together to form a vision of a whole.
Don't miss this free exhibit closing tomorrow at the St. Louis Art Museum. Visit slam.org for more info.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
In partnership with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, here's Songs of America.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, God shed His grace on thee, and caress thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Visit slso.org to see more from the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Next week, a new book explores the history of St. Louis fashion. Plus, a group paints scenes in historic Webster Groves. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.